So I think I have to still touch upon what Gayatri said, the whole leadership deficit. And we were talking about this earlier and how, the leadership deficit isn't just to do with icons who you see on your screens. It's not just limited to the players, but also women in industry and different facets of it. And maybe I'll start with you, Deepti. We were talking about just the opportunities that today are presented. There are more, obviously, opportunities, but how do we get more women included into sport, and not just a playing perspective, in every other dimension that we're seeing as well?
Great. Thank you. I think Gayatri's covered most of the stuff, and over the last 2 days, one observation that I've made, at least in terms of all the other conferences that I've been to, is we're constantly trying to see and talk about the fact of why sport. And I think we've come a long way, because in the last 2 days, we've spoken about how to move sport forward. So I think, this audience here has made us believe that we're not really questioning the narrative of how sport can really change lives. I think there's immense opportunity, and women are time and time again proving how well they can do. I think the videos that Gayatri just showed, we have so many examples, but if we can actually channelize them and showcase them as, in a much earlier way, I think that would help. So I just want to give you 2 stories, actually. Everybody's talking about Deepa Karmakar, and we're very fortunate at the foundation to actually start working with her since 2013, when nobody actually spoke about Deepa Karmakar or about gymnastics. So when Rahul Dravid, when we launched the program, he told us that I want diversity and I want lots of girls in my program. So when we did this whole nationwide search, we were like, okay, should we look at gymnastics? We don't know what's the actual situation. And then Deepa comes out of nowhere speaking really confidently and saying, "Main medal leke aaungi didi, aap dekhiye." And till today she keeps telling us that I don't understand the reason why India is celebrating me. I haven't come back with a medal. Yeah. But if you look at that point that she makes, as a country, we've actually started celebrating the 4th place. And we've come a long way. And a woman, and look at the Olympics, we've had 2 of our girls who've actually come back with the medal. So what I'd like to point out is, when the Deepa Karmakar story, everybody is talking about Nandi, her first coach, but incidentally, her first coach was Soma Nandi, who actually taught her gymnastics at the age of 6. She is the one who's actually taught her to play the sport, and then transitioned her into Mr. Nandi, who luckily they happen to be husband and wife, so it's a great model that's working there in Tripura. But that's really the first story about how a lady has actually been the backbone, but it's never come out in terms of the story. The second story that I'd like to talk about is Abhinav Bindra. We keep talking about, 1.5 billion people, one individual gold medal. I think that's what drives us to create more medals for the country and really get more Olympians and Paralympians. But what is very surprising, and a lot of people may not know unless you've read his book, is that his coach was Gabby, who was a lady. And another very important lady who was actually part of his entire planning and periodization of his entire Olympic journey was Manisha Malhotra, former tennis player herself, who actually worked with him day and night, planned his entire schedule. And if you see, it is 2 women behind one successful man for India, in terms of the gold medal. So what I'm trying to say is there have been proven records. There have been, there are enough statistics that we can throw out in terms of how women, if given the opportunity, can shine. And I did a small head count in the morning of how many women we were here, and we were about 22 out of everyone. But the number is increasing at every conference, so that's a good thing. So I think there's, if everyone seated here in your own individual capacities can actually ensure that women are given the opportunity to, take on more responsibility, inspiration will follow, but the story needs to be told. And I think Star is doing a fabulous job of telling these stories. And, I think that's the way to go. Because today, gymnastics, you see about 20 to 30 new gymnastic academies opened up after Deepa's, win in that sense. And badminton, I read some stats somewhere saying that there are more badminton rackets being sold than cricket bats. So for a country like us, it's incredible because cricket is the #1 sport, but today you're actually seeing badminton take on that. So I believe there's there's opportunity, there is enough incredible qualified women to be doing the job, and inspiration will follow. And it's not just inspiration for women to take up sport, but I think everybody gets inspired by just seeing a Sindhu or a Saina or a Deepa Karmakar.
Yeah, actually, there's another name for me that comes to mind, which is, again, I turned to motorsport, which is something I know well, but Manisha Kaltenbaum, who, for many of you may not know, is one woman who's in charge of close to 600 people that run a Formula One team, and is the only woman in perhaps a male-dominated sport that runs it successfully and converted that team into actually a team that makes money and continues there. So, as you said, plenty of opportunity to be leaders in the industry as well. I'll turn to Trupti at the other end, and Trupti, I want to just turn to your own experience as a player coming through the journey, and just the mindset shift that you saw in your journey, but what you see today as a coach for the young girls that you're seeing coming through as well.
Well, I mean, completely believe in this mindset that we definitely need to change, and it all, lies in the changing the mindset. A classic example where I experienced myself, I was stopped when I started playing badminton by my grandfather saying, no, you cannot get in. A girl child getting into sports is not done in our family. And, I was too small. I was just 9 years old then, so I didn't understand much of these things. But it was my parents who were supportive, who pushed me. And he went to such an extent that he told my mother that if you think of putting her into sports, don't think of coming back home. So, to that extent. So, but still, parents were supportive. We went ahead, and when my name started coming in the newspapers, and he was reading it out, and a lot of his friends started asking, who's she? Then he's like proudly telling my granddaughter and all those things. So he started getting to know that the entire society is accepting it. And they are in favor of this, that there's nothing, different, that whether a boy wins or a girl wins or something like that. So I think after that, he was so happy. He used to come and watch my tournaments. So that completely changed the mindset. He's been a freedom fighter. So you can understand, I don't blame them, but it's just the mindset which was very important at that point. And it really made difference. So I completely believe in that, and now that I have become a coach, of course the responsibility is much more, and we've been talking that that we have only one Saina and one Sindhu who are doing well, if I have to talk about my sport. So we are also talking about growing the numbers. We don't have any backbenchers, again, the backup, I'm behind them. So we are trying to create the numbers now. And we are just not going to get it randomly. We'll have to work it from the grassroots level. And it has to be through schools. That's where we are going to get. And where now we have been talking about, getting sports in school and introducing sports. Rather, some of the children who I've come across, they don't know what is badminton. I was very surprised. So, whether it is with ball, whether it is shuttle, is that the one, they keep asking. So I think getting sports in school it's like more like an education, just introducing them to the sports. And that's going to be very important in all sports, not only badminton, but in all sports. So working at the grassroots level, again, very, very vital.
Thanks, Trupti. Meenakshi, I'll turn to you. I mean, you had the PE department at the Lady Shri Ram College. You've been in the Lipinka Book of Records. You've had your achievements on your side, and now you're obviously looking to the next generation to build that with them as well. Where do you see things like? What are you doing at the college? Just for everyone here, just tell us what goes on through your initiatives at the college to bring more women into sport there as well.
Firstly, I would like to congratulate CII for at least putting all women together for this panel, and wonderful presentation by you, Gayatri, too. Already the floor is all set, but I really want to say something here. It's been 15 years of my working at Lady Shri Ram College. There is something very interesting known as sports quota admissions in University of Delhi, right? And we try to get the right talent in our respective colleges. Let's say, I can talk about Delhi University, let's say 80 colleges of Delhi University. But what happens to all these sports achievers who are a part of the university circuit, they excel. How many are we able to retain? Now that's also a gap, again, a gap to be bridged. But the work is in progress, and I strongly believe that this kind of encouragement, when there is a space in higher education for the sporting talent to be retained, will make a difference somewhere, because there is no surety of a professional career ahead. One injury, there is no backup. Okay, you are a cricketer, you may get a pension after Ranji Trophy or whatever, but let's face the reality. Still, all these Olympic sports, there is nothing as is financial security running behind a national champion or a corporate which will take care. So somewhere I see a lot of gap there again. And well, you made a presentation on rural India. Yes, there is a lot of difference between the real India, that's Bharat, we represent Bharat, and there is something known as India, which is the metro. You can't actually talk about both the sectors in one go. There is a lot of difference, be it the infrastructural or whatever. Whenever a girl child is going out, why is it the family always accompanies a girl child? That's something to be questioned, and she has already come back as a coach. Okay, I've been an international swimmer, I'm heading LSR, physical education. There are many more who are joining, but there is so much scope of women coming back as technical officials, let's say coaches or managers, or the top positions in sports. I think somewhere it will make a difference, but I strongly believe that reservation in higher education or promotion. Then the opening session yesterday, the minister said that we are going to bring the marks of sports. That's something I think should have been the right thing to do. I'm very hopeful that things will change.
Thank you. We all are, I think, and it's good to see the alignment of seeing that, as we said, more women leaders in not just a playing capacity, but all around. Ms. Prabhu, I'll come to you, because you've consciously picked football in some senses, and I just want to ask you why, firstly, you went in that direction of picking football, but also what you see as the fundamental challenges today after you've now been a part of that journey a little bit.
So when my engagement with football, I don't have a football background, I don't have a sports background, went into it from a gender equality perspective. My organization works on women's empowerment issues, and everyone's well aware, but no harm in reiterating that we have a huge challenge in our country. We rank 120th out of 159 countries in the world in the Gender Inequality Index. So that's a fact that we've got to deal with. And when we're talking about these wonderful success stories, the role models that you shared, that's just a little, just a little drop in the ocean, because the reality out there is that the minute the girl hits puberty, she has to drop out of school. Her attire changes because she's got to be more modestly dressed. She's got to sit like a lady. She's got to not go out to play but help out with household chores. So that's the lived reality of the young girls out there across the country. And I'm not just talking about rural areas, but to a large extent even in urban areas. We're talking about a country where public spaces are so masculinized. Do you really get to see girls out there playing in public parks? When you go and access public transport, how many women do you see out there? Do you really, the entire public space is so masculinized. So we're really talking about this cultural setting within which we work. So as an organization, of course, we were really looking at doing the regular stuff of education, health, livelihoods. But beyond that, there's something, the structural, cultural constraints that women face. So you really have even a woman CEO or a woman minister still being subject to domestic violence, sexual assault. So what's it? What's lacking really? So we're really looking at something, that magic pill, some innovative intervention where we can really transcend that, because that, beyond all the other inputs, there is something beyond that you need to address. And you were repeatedly talking about mindsets, but beyond mindsets also, the entire society, the way it's structured, the way our public infrastructure is structured, there's challenges of entry point at every level for a woman. So we were really looking at it holistically, and we wanted to use sports, but we deliberated for quite a while. and finally arrived at football for girls. And a very conscious decision, unlike Magic Bus, which does a range of activities, we really adopted football for multiple reasons. Of course, the social impact has been, last couple of days, been repeatedly emphasized, so I don't want to go into too much of that. We are well aware about the kind of impact it has on health, education outcomes. In fact, I just want to mention one of my girls, Somi, who's in LSR now. When we were doing her case study, she actually came up with the fact that her grades went up when she started football. And she got admission into LSR. We were so proud of her, and that was a real tangible impact. But that's just one of the things. But we picked football because it's a team sport, because we feel that girls don't have networks beyond their family setting. We wanted girls to have larger set of friends, be in a team sport, have social networks, go out in public, play a outdoor sport, claim public spaces, and shatter gender stereotypes. So that was a conscious decision. But beyond that, what you're talking about, the pull and push factor, is it just charity and philanthropy we're talking about? Not at all. It's just hard business. It makes sense because it's low-hanging fruit. Why? Because football for women is doing phenomenally well. If you look at the international space, women's FIFA World Cup has seen absolutely record-breaking viewership. The US team, Japan, they have a huge fan following. If you look at the Indian team here, the girls' team was ranked 49th in the world a couple of years back, a good 100 points ahead of the boys. And, with almost next to no investment. In fact, they lost their ranking because they hadn't got an opportunity to go abroad to play for a couple of years. And yet they do so well. With so little, they do phenomenally well. So, for us, it made business sense, really, to focus on one team sport, the sport which is the most popular in the world, where the girls are, despite all odds, doing phenomenally well. And we were looking at when you're talking about grassroots perspective, you need to have a large number of people playing the game. They become your viewers, they become your talent base. So we have a two-pronged approach. So we've also been working very closely with AIFF, and my partner Sarah Pilot is the chairperson of the Women's Committee there. I've been really pushing for, investing in the girls. It is a challenge, and also the fact that the way the associations work, and it's so scattered, there is no holistic approach, so it is a challenge. I also wanted to kind of share, yesterday I think one of the speakers spoke about how the ISL match in Kochi, how the stadium was packed and you could feel that palpable excitement. But then, when IWL was launched, the Women's League, they struggled to get 10 teams on board. They had no media partner at all. And it was just like, you could just have had that match back there, in your local grounds. And it's really sad because it's the first Women's League that was launched. For the next edition of the IWL, I believe they're just struggling to get a women's team. And if you go to the clubs, it's like, it's politically correct to say that you'll have a women's team, but they don't really see business sense in investing in the women. Now, the thing is, how do you expect women players to sustain if you don't have opportunities to play? You're not going to play one nationals or two nationals and then expect your family to say, you don't have to get married now. You continue to play and, you sustain it, and maybe, you'll be successful in 5 years' time. That's a very critical window for women where they're pressurized by their families to get married, have babies, and settle down, as we say. So, so we've got to have a holistic picture of what that girl goes through.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's to many, I think you wouldn't even think about the fact that actually our Indian women's football team might make the FIFA World Cup before our men's side does, and that's it's worth. Therefore, as you said, more than if you needed a reason, even more so, that is a valid enough one to come in and put put every egg in that basket in many senses, and you see the support that Indian football from the men's perspective is getting anyway. Deepti, you want to add something there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to a point that Meenakshi made earlier about the sports education side of it. I think we've constantly felt that at GoSports, because a lot of the athletes that we're working with is in the attempt to get them to the Olympics and the Paralympics. And what we realize is they drop out of mainstream school and colleges, and they go back and they come back and the media is in their face and they don't know what to say because they've not had any formal training and they don't have the basic skills to be taken care of that. So we've actually launched something called as an athlete education program, and we're taking care of basic skills for elite sports athletes, so emerging and elite athletes, and BCCI has now signed us up as the official knowledge partners for them, and we're actually doing this program for all cricketers across all age groups. And we've done this, and we're very proud to say that just before the Indian team went for the World Cup, we actually did a team building and motivation workshop for them, because all of them train in different states and they come exactly 3 weeks before going for the World Cup to train together. So they're not actually talking and they're not one team. So we realize that basic things like this is also education, but it's important to translate it. So ma'am, that's something where we're trying to bridge the gap, especially for sports people. So if there's anyone who's working with sports people and they want education programs to be run, so it's even as basic as how do you manage your money? Because today, the little prize money that they get from the state government, they don't know what to do with it. So I just thought I'll share that thing that we're doing our bit in some way. So
it's a great initiative. I'll come back to you, Meenakshi ma'am, because you talked about that drop off, and you talked about sports quotas coming in, right? And we see so often so many girls come in through that route, but then 5 years later they're nowhere to be seen. We don't see them on the sporting global map. How do you address that drop off? What can you do? Is it a mindset shift from the parents? I mean, how do you, as a college as well, address that?
Somewhere what I have seen in the last 15 years, I can say, when they are reaching out, it's about playing for college, playing for university. But along with that, it's about getting a good job, settling down in life. And somewhere there is no security. If I continue for my master's or I'm continuing my sport, let's say, for a PhD or an MBA or something, where am I actually going to end up, right? So somewhere I think that to channelize these athletes, achievers, that you can get into sports management, or there is a scope that once you are out of your active sporting career, there is an opportunity. So somewhere that linkage is also important. There is a program, like she pointed out. So there can be opportunities somewhere there for young women. And I would even like to say something, I've actually forgotten something very interesting you've just said. Yeah, about the job opportunities, and I think I missed the point. Yeah, I'll come back one second.
I think I'm just going to come to you, Trupti, with just some closing remarks before we're sadly out of time. But anything you'd like to add to where we are, where you want to see Indian sport, and especially for women, going from here?
Well, if you have to talk about gender parity with respect to the prize money, when you were saying, Deepti, when I was playing in juniors, there was definitely a difference. The boys were paid much more than the girls, because they play more matches, we play less matches. That was the explanation they gave. But they don't see. Efforts is equal. That's what I believe, whether it is, the boys are putting in or the girls are putting. But of course, things have changed now. Even at the international level in badminton, the prize money has been made equal. And talking about, about the grassroots level, what we have been speaking since yesterday, we need to create the numbers. And we have a classic example of a smaller village in Gujarat where the basic equipment like football was given to them, and we have about 27 girls playing football from a village. I mean, you can understand the way the orthodox thinking goes in villages and smaller towns, and if you have a sport like football, I think that itself is an achievement. But I think in this part, the broadcasters also play a major role, and I think such kind of things have to be projected much more, made it much aware, and I think that's definitely going to help, sports coming up in general. That's very important. So media, social media is also very vital in this.
Thanks, Trupti. Thank you to everyone on our panel. We are going to close on that note. I think it was a very engaging conversation. I think hopefully it's not falling on many deaf ears, and we do see it only moving forward as we have seen in the recent past as well. So thank you. Thanks so much for that. We will have our closing remarks from Jalaj Dani as well as we bring 2 days of this conference to a close. But I think